In this video, folks, what you're going to learn about is the difference between Bitcoin, Ethereum. What is a smart contract? What does ADA or Cardano have to do with Ethereum? What does Polkadot have to do with Ethereum? What are their importances? The only way you're going to find out all that information and all the answers to that information is to watch our video. Enjoy it.
Welcome back to the Hair Curler Chronicles. You got Tim and Nancy Danter coming to you from Kitchener-Waterloo. We're in the kitchen today, and I am almost, I got some excitement because we got Haas in the house from the Onyx Block, and I feel like there's a celebrity here. So Haas is one of the YouTube University professors that Tim and I watch on a regular basis. Because he's
Canadian YouTube University.
He is a Canadian YouTube University professor, and what Haas does really, really well is he's great at showing the charts and things like that. And you and I don't show charts.
Well, he's relatable. He's more relatable. I mean, some of the YouTube professors that we watch on YouTube University, God love them, but it's like talking to my accountant. It's like
you have to really pay attention. Where I think what Haas you do really, really well is you make it so easy to understand what you're talking about. And so we watch him to get our information on our buy and sells and understanding what the market's doing, especially here in Canada. So welcome, Haas. Will you tell us a little bit about yourself and a bit about your channel?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of cryptocurrency and my channel, I started with buying cryptocurrency in 2020 when the new year had hit. It started out as just a little thing where, you're buying it and you're not really paying attention to what the technology is. And then you start actually looking into it and you start getting a little obsessed if you're like me. And that spiraled down into me making a YouTube channel. And especially when I realized how many people are in the space in terms of not being fully honest. There's a lot of pump and dumps, especially with a lot of altcoins, giving a bad name for both cryptocurrency and a lot of YouTubers alike. So I really try to, one, give the best unbiased information possible, and then two, make sure that everything is above board. Especially for me, I wouldn't promote something on my channel that I didn't use directly, didn't buy specifically, or wouldn't promote because it's a good, solid project. So typically on Onyx Block, what we do is we talk about individual projects. We'll do a whole analysis on an individual crypto. More often than not, though, we are looking at charts, typical trends. I'm a big macro trend guy, what's going to be happening in the next couple months. But we do look at short terms as well, and we dissect things like crashes and pumps and talk about how that affects and what the implications are on the crypto market from those.
Yeah, no, you do a really good job.
Interesting.
Because I do, as I said, I watch you regularly, and it helps me to frame up what I'm thinking and our decisioning. So,
did you just initially get into the crypto space in 2020?
So I had Bitcoin back in 2011. Yeah, I don't have it now, unfortunately. Yeah, no, I think my life would be a much different story.
What did you do? Yeah.
So, when did you get rid of that Bitcoin?
Fairly easy. So I just used it for one simple transaction back in that date, and it was in and out of my account within a couple of minutes. So when I first made that transaction, my thought process was this is nothing. It's a payment scheme, maybe like PayPal or something like that. It's a way to send money. I was interested, but it didn't hit me that this is a harder version of current cash. And then again in 2017 is when I was a fly on the wall kind of thing, looking at everything going, but I was still playing into that narrative that Bitcoin is this big pump and dump scheme. It's not really real at the end of the day. So I saw it as an interesting thing that happened. And then, going into 2020 from 2019, it was a very volatile transition into that year. And then obviously that year spiraled down. During that period, I really started getting interested in macroeconomics and the stock market, and then started re-looking at this thing called Bitcoin, what it actually is. And then you start to realize that this is probably the most elegant store of value known to man that's ever been created, and bar none. So that kind of spiraled me into what I do today with cryptocurrency and YouTube. So that's basically the story of how I got into crypto.
Well, don't you think that Bitcoin is sort of the gateway for a lot of people?
Yeah, absolutely. Bitcoin is definitely the gateway into your cryptocurrencies, 100%. I think it's the easiest for most people to understand, which is why you get things like, people really love Bitcoin and almost idolize Bitcoin in terms of, you see people almost like propping up Satoshi like a deity. It is what it is, but Bitcoin at the end of the day, it is one of the best stores of value that we'll ever see.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was interesting that a couple weeks ago I did two videos back to back with what is crypto, and then we started with Bitcoin. I did this with my girlfriend Debbie, and because she kept saying to me, when you talk about all these altcoins, it goes way over my head. Can you go back and just start with Bitcoin and let's start talking about crypto, the entry point into crypto? And so I did that 2-part series with her, just for people who don't even know what Bitcoin is or what cryptocurrency is. And we had a lot of great feedback from it, especially for people who didn't know anything about it. But I was hoping today to maybe jump in and do a next level on this, which is Ethereum, because you hear Bitcoin and then the next thing you hear is Ethereum, and nobody knows what the heck Ethereum is. So I thought maybe what we could do is we could spend a few minutes and we could talk about what Ethereum was from your point of view.
Yeah, so it's very interesting when you start looking at altcoins and how those impact the crypto market, especially when I first entered the market. I was very much in the mindset, well, there can only ever be Bitcoin. Why would I buy any other coin? It just doesn't make logical sense. The price point on Bitcoin didn't faze me because you understand what the tokenomics are. You understand what the halvening structure is. You understand how it's going to be created. And then you look at this weird thing called Ethereum. It has deflationary aspects to it where it burns specific numbers of Ethereum. It's infinite in terms of its supply. And it's constantly going through a proof of work cycle. Right now, it's transitioning to the proof of stake cycle, but it's going through a proof of work cycle where a bunch of computers are solving complex math problems to generate Ethereum, exactly like how Bitcoin's working, except the components that are used to mine. So that is transitioning for ETH, but it's hard to get in that mindset of, well, why would I buy anything other than Bitcoin? And it's very specific because when you look at Bitcoin essentially is a great store of value. Its transactions per second is roughly around 5. The fees are fairly large, but I could say the same about Ethereum right now. And the transaction times are typically a little bit slower just because the system gets a little bit more clogged up. When you're looking at Ethereum, it has an extra layer to what's on the system. So it settles what's called smart contracts. And what a smart contract is usually if you and I came to an agreement on something, we'd write up a contract. I could maybe take you to court if you broke the agreement for whatever reason. But it does come down to human trust. I'm trusting you to hold your end of the bargain, and you're trusting me to hold my end of the bargain.
Kind of like fiat, right? That we have that trust in fiat.
Exactly. And what happened with Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin came out and it removed the trust from Bitcoin, right? It removes the human trust and just brings it down to code. And that's exactly what's happening with smart contracts. So when you start to think about that, and then you think, okay, gold or Bitcoin is digital gold. What is Ethereum? Well, when you think about things that like insurance policies or annual payments or anything that we use in our modern world right now would benefit by a platform like a smart contract platform, which Bitcoin obviously doesn't have the capability. And the reason why it doesn't have the capability is because it wasn't programmed in the code base. This is something that came from Stefan Thomas that inspired Vitalik Buterin to actually make the smart contract platform, and it's turned into Ethereum and then a slew of other cryptocurrencies. So I think when you talk about Ethereum, you have to look at it from the lens of not a store of value, but as a way to conduct transactions amongst a broader spectrum. So that's things like decentralized exchanges or whatever.
Okay, so I get that a little bit. And Ethereum was invented by another Canadian, partially, correct? Maybe
Yes.
you could talk a little bit about him and where that. What do you?
Well, no, there were. Well, I don't know about the other two. There were 3 of them initially. It was
So it was a group. I can't remember the exact number. I think it was like 7 developers or so.
Okay.
The lead developer was Vitalik Buterin. He's a Russian citizen and Canadian citizen. I believe he was researching in University of Waterloo.
Correct.
It could be. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So they all work together to build the Ethereum blockchain. Some of the big names on that team is actually Charles Hoskinson, which a lot of people would know from Cardano. And then you have Dr. Gavin Wood, who obviously went over to make the Polkadot substrate code base. So you have a lot of brilliant minds that went into building Ethereum. Vitalik Buterin is definitely the face and the lead developer and did a bulk of the work, but there was a lot of inspiration from a lot of other very bright minds in that system and that have moved on to other projects to kind of rework and improve on what was already built.
So I always say to people when I'm trying to explain it that like Bitcoin is like your savings account and Ethereum is like your checking account. Would that be a fair statement or have I got that wrong?
Yeah, I think it's different. So anytime that you buy a token, so one token represents that share amount of the system that you're buying. So what you're buying is you're buying the system. So if I was buying 1 Ethereum, for example, I'm buying 1 Ethereum worth of that system. I own one portion of that entire system. You're not investing in a company. You're not investing in an outfit. You're investing in what this is in terms of a blockchain system that's decentralized that any developer can go on and make their DApp and launch it on this platform, and it's going to grow in value for more people using it. So I don't know if I'd equate either. So I'd say Bitcoin. So here's the thing about the savings account. I'd say Bitcoin is more just a brick of gold that you would put under your pillow. Obviously, you can earn interest on the brick of gold here in Bitcoin's case, which is great. But with Ethereum, you're really investing in what Ethereum is going to be doing in the next 10 to 15 years, at least when you're looking at it from a long-term perspective.
So this sends me to the next question, which has to do with there seems to be a bit of a back and forth cat fight between Ethereum and Cardano. And now because Charles Hoskinson started at Ethereum and now has gone over to Cardano, there must have been some form of a falling out with that.
Well, and Polkadot's bringing up the rear as well, right?
I know, but let's talk about Cardano first.
Okay.
Yeah, to go into Cardano, I don't know if there's anything that happened amongst the team. I would say a lot of people's perceptions of Vitalik Buterin has changed. The big concerns that were brought to light about Ethereum and the Ethereum blockchain is that movements and specific changes were not so much happening for the good of the community, more so for the good of certain stakeholders. Which can be a good and a bad thing, depending on like what coding is being changed or what's happening. Nothing concerning has happened, and I can never see a situation where Ethereum goes away. I don't believe in that. And again, even with Cardano, I believe in a multi-blockchain world. There's plenty of room for both blockchains. When you look at Cardano, though, Cardano is very specific in terms of it's peer reviewed to get any changes to be implemented within the system. So it must be university grade researched and reviewed before you're implementing these changes, which it can be very beneficial when you're looking at concerns with monetary policy today. And there's really no rhyme or reason to what governments are doing in terms of printing money and what's going on there. But having a peer-reviewed process to determine what is the best for the system is probably the more preferable way to go, which is why me personally, I'm a little bit more bullish on a blockchain like Cardano than Ethereum. And again, that doesn't mean Ethereum doesn't have a chance or a room in the space. It has very specific room, but
So let me ask you a question. If you can back up there a minute, you're more bullish on Cardano than you are on Ethereum. If you could just revisit that fact of why.
Yeah. So I would say one in terms of what's happening with, the peer-reviewed process definitely has a big part to play. When you're looking at things like Cardano, looking into opening up peer-to-peer loan lending in Africa and opening up a lot of financial services to the traditionally unbanked, especially in Africa. If you think about all this human capital, all of a sudden being able to have access to small microloans produced by you and I or any other Cardano holder that can loan them enough money to go get that new tractor for whatever they're using, or to buy livestock at an auction to raise and then sell at a later date. Having the capability to essentially bring up a continent with peer-to-peer lending is one of the early functions of what Cardano is trying to do. So there's obviously a humanitarian aspect to it. But when you're looking at a blockchain that is peer-reviewed and there's very, very much due diligence going into the blockchain in terms of what is best for the system, not what's best for Charles Hoskinson or what's best for the United States of America or Canada or whatever. It's what's best for the Cardano system and the Cardano holders. And that's a big thing that we should be protecting, especially now, considering where our monetary policy is. So I'd say in terms of where Ethereum is going, it's probably fundamentally different because it's a very developer focused, trying to get as many developers and projects on board as possible. But when you look at something like Ethereum, and then you look at something like our legacy markets, say the stock market, for example, can you actually see the United States government or the NASDAQ, a company as big as the NASDAQ, can you actually see them giving up the stock market to somebody like Vitalik Buterin and the Ethereum blockchain? Fundamentally, I don't see that happening. I see it much more likely going over to another decentralized exchange with the proper regulatory clarity and the proper fundamentals to facilitate the transactions per second that the stock market would need.
So it would become a centralized, more of a centralized as opposed to a decentralized in your example there.
Not so much. So in terms of onboarding systems, maybe the individual markets might have a centralized component to it. But when you're onboarding legacy markets, so if you look at right now just how banks are trading money and everything's with fiat. Eventually, at one point in time, that's not going to be the case. Eventually, it's going to be cryptocurrency in some form or fashion. And a lot of markets, especially trading markets, derivatives, anything like that, a lot of those will be through blockchain channels and will run on these decentralized blockchain systems. I don't think blockchain works properly if it's not fully decentralized.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair.
Okay. So quickly, going back a little bit to one of the things I've heard about Cardano versus Ethereum is that Cardano, just to your point, has great fundamental thought process on it, but there hasn't been as many people building on it. And why would that be exactly? There's not as many developers building on that platform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you see, it's funny right now because you see blockchains like Polkadot almost outpacing in some ways Cardano in what they're having done. We have things like the P-Swap DEX that's being launched fairly soon. Of course, everything's being delayed with Polkadot as well, considering developers are hard to come by in this space, and it's been very difficult for people. But when you look at Cardano specifically, it's a peer-reviewed process that's going to take a lot of time to get certain changes implemented. And then as well, Ethereum obviously had the running head start being created years prior to Cardano's even launch. So I'd say right now, because there's no developers, doesn't really tell us what's going to happen in the next little while. And I'll admit that everything that I'm talking about in terms of Cardano being able to outperform Ethereum is a complete speculation, as long as everything is held to what we expect. But we do see that we have the Alonzo update that's bringing smart contracts to the Cardano system. Once smart contracts are on the Cardano system, at that point, we can start seeing decentralized exchanges. So you guys have heard of Uniswap. It'll be the similar type of thing where you see Uniswap and other decentralized exchanges start to develop onto Cardano. Another benefit to Cardano is they've actually built in a code that is going to direct inject and transform any Ethereum ERC20 token and move it into the Cardano system. So the one benefit is they can keep making their projects on Ethereum, which a lot of people are, and then eventually move it over to Cardano once the system is fully operated. But until we see that operation either on Cardano or on Polkadot, I don't think we'll see much activity from developers.
So you just said something that's really important, that in the memory banks here, we watched something. Oh my gosh, who was it? Razor's Edge. Razors. Oh my gosh.
I know.
Oh,
Ockman's.
Oh, Ockman's Razor. Razor's Ockman? Ockman's Razors. But what it was is exactly what you said, was that they're going to build something on
Ethereum, but they're going to transfer
but
it
then
over
it's going to come over to a Cardano, and this company or this developer is going to have the best of both worlds, and he's out of Sweden. Oh my goodness. Have you heard about Ockman's Razor?
I've heard of the theory in terms of Occam's razor, but I don't recognize the channel, no.
Yeah, that's one of the ones that's on my watch list.
We did a lot of, I mean, not obviously a lot of deep diving on Google and YouTube and stuff, but there's not a lot out about it other than the fact that it's based out of Sweden.
Yeah,
and it was exactly what you were saying about building on one and then being able to work on another.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important thing. So I've mentioned before in some of my videos that we're really we're moving into a multi-blockchain world where everything's going to be seamless and interoperable, and there's going to be room for both Ethereum and Cardano. Yeah. What their purposes are going to be and who uses them is going to be completely different. But for me, I would see Cardano being this peer-reviewed process. That's probably something that researchers, schools, and other entities would like to use rather than Ethereum. And not saying that Ethereum isn't good and it's great at what it's going to do. All I'm saying is that there's space for everyone, especially in the world here. It's not going to be monopolized in terms of one or the other.
Yeah. So, and then earlier, Tim mentioned Polkadot. So we got Ethereum, Cardano in a bit of a head-to-head race. Then you add Polkadot onto it. And he also was Dr. You just said it a few seconds ago. Gavin Wood is the one that was, and he was part of the team with Vitalik Buterin developing Ethereum. And now he's over on Polkadot. So add that layer in for us. What does that look like?
Yeah, I think it's important for people to recognize that, like, if just going into my portfolio for a minute to show you my headspace and to reaffirm the multi-blockchain world, I own the same amount of value in terms of the same dollar amount in Cardano and Polkadot for a specific reason. Now, if you own Ethereum and if you're very bullish on Ethereum and where Ethereum is going to go, and you should be. Granted, Ethereum is going to be an excellent network. It's going to have a lot of developers on it. It's going to grow exponentially from where it's at right now. Some would even consider that it's being massively undervalued, which I would typically agree with looking at Ethereum's price right now. Mm-hmm. But when you look at other blockchains and everything else, so as I said, I own the same amount of Polkadot and Cardano, and that's to build my hedge against Ethereum. And that's grown because I've gradually become more bullish on Cardano and Polkadot rather than Ethereum, because I really look at Bitcoin as the version 1 crypto, the bare bones, what we got. Then you look at Ethereum, the version 2, it's more fleshed out, has more features, it does more things fundamentally. And then you have version 3, which is going to improve on all aspects before. And that's what we have with Cardano and Polkadot. So they're still very new. And when you look at Cardano and Polkadot, it's still a very speculative market. But specifically why Polkadot is so interesting to me is because of the whole ecosystem that it's building. It has active projects that are building around it right now, testing on the Kusama test network, which is basically a straight code copy of Polkadot that Gavin and the team made. There's slight differences, but now this own blockchain, Kusama, is governed by its own group of people, and all the parachains will test right on Kusama first before deploying live on Polkadot. So Polkadot is interesting because of the developers that are already showing interest to work with it. Polkadot substrate coding is actually a very, very easy coding to get used to. So it's a good entry level for a lot of developers, a lot of industries that would go through. The different layer of complexity with Polkadot is that there are parachains that are sold off to specific entities to build onto their blockchain so they can deploy a parachain onto the Polkadot network. That's a whole nother added layer of complexity when you look at Polkadot, but fundamentally Polkadot's going to be able to do the same things as Cardano and as Ethereum. It just depends on who's going to do it better, or who's going to garner more of a user base at that level. But when you look at transaction speeds, which is what I focus on, transaction speeds, fees, and fundamentals, and ultimately to user interface, you start to realize, okay, well, maybe Uniswap and maybe Ethereum might not be the end all be all. I'm going to wait for everything else to come out to make that determination. So it's good to have all, but you don't want to be too dead set into one bet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so going back to the premise that maybe somebody who's brand new to the space is looking at this. This is sort of the gateway into altcoins. You really need to get your head wrapped around, okay, if you figured Bitcoin out, now you need to get into this version 2, maybe version 3, but you're stuff to get your head wrapped into what does Ethereum do? What does a Cardano do? And what does Polkadot do? And then those would be sort of the next layer as opposed to jumping right into the coins. Is that what you would suggest people do?
Yeah, I would say that's probably a great strategy, especially if you're somebody that's hesitant to get into altcoins. I would think about this when you're looking at altcoins. If you are hesitant about getting into altcoins over Bitcoin or even Ethereum, because a lot of people now hold Bitcoin and Ethereum, not just Bitcoin, which is great to see. But when you are looking at that, you have to think back to the .com age. Would you have just bought Google if you had the chance? Would you have just bought IBM? Arguably, the bookstore that nobody thought to invest in was one of the greatest investments known to man for that generation. So when you look at that era and then you look at here, and sure, there are a lot of scams in the .com area. There was a lot of crashes. A lot of companies went belly up. And that's part of the risk that you're going to take when a new technology is deployed. And if you just want to be safe, buy Ethereum, buy Bitcoin, and be happy with it. Don't look at your portfolio, and that's it. You're going to do well with just that. But if you're looking at investing in the future of blockchain technology and the future of our financial structure, it's definitely time to start looking into a lot of altcoins. I would definitely absolutely recommend Cardano and Polkadot as the entry level. And then once you start learning about those, then you can start having on the lens of, okay, we are moving into a multi-blockchain world and everything's going to work together seamlessly. So we should just invest in projects that have good fundamentals.
Yeah, no, I agree. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for helping our viewers understand step 2 in the learning about crypto world. Got Bitcoin down. Now they're dipping their toe into Ethereum. So this is wonderful. And we definitely need more folks like you, Haas, out there teaching everybody, because it is such an exciting space, and we're still consider ourselves quite new in all of this. So we rely on people who've been there a little bit more before us. So for our viewers, if you want to get more information and get amazing videos with really good technical analysis, go and check out Onyx Block on YouTube. That's ONYX Block, BLOCK. And you can, and how many videos a week do you typically do? 1 or 2, I think? Basically.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the market too. I don't like making videos just for the sake of making videos. If there's something to talk about, I'll make a video, but it's often 2 to 3 times a week, sometimes more, sometimes less, really depending on what's happening.
No, this is amazing. Thank you so much, Haas, and we will look forward to having another conversation soon.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was great to chat.
Thanks.
Thank you.